Jannette, fucking A, man, you are so cool.
So my very first consulting job or training job was training phone sex operators on vocabulary. So they said, we need research. Now, I got to tell you, the research was very illuminating. I don't know if I can say this.
Yeah, yes, you can. Yes, please say it, please.
There was a whole page, 3 columns of words just for the word.
Give me like 5. Give me like 5 variations.
This is a conversation I have not had with anyone ever.
I'm sure it's not. I
learned that we can take our destiny into our own hands by having a business. We can solve the problems that we want to solve in the world if we use a business to do that.
I really don't think we can top that. I think we're done.
Well, I bet we can.
Hi, everybody. This is Dan and Dante. Welcome to Middle Age Mess, the show for people who check the obituaries every single day. All right, so today we've got a real business powerhouse on. She's been around for 35 years plus, marketing, consulting, work with entrepreneurs, just doing a lot of really cool stuff in the business world, marketing world, you name it world. She's done something in it. Jannette Anderson. Jannette, hi.
Hi there. I'm super happy to be here because you're fun.
That's what I keep telling everybody. Eventually they'll believe it. First, we're going to ask, who are you? How would my audience know you and how'd you get here today?
Oh, man, those are some deep existential questions.
We start big.
Exactly. Okay, so the little more mundane version of that is I'm from Canada, from Calgary, Alberta, but I call myself polyhomerous because I'm pathologically allergic to winter. So about 8 years ago, I sold my house and everything I owned. And now I go wherever it's nicer. I work online supporting entrepreneurs in growing their business and especially maturepreneurs now. Still love what I do after 40 years of doing it. I just prefer to do it where there's palm trees and pools.
I just need to tell you right off the bat, I'm going to steal the term polyhomerous. I'm going to give you absolutely no credit whatsoever. I'm going to use it as if I thought of it myself, just FYI.
You go right ahead.
Okay.
I actually got it from someone else, so feel free to pass it on. I call that R&D, rip off and duplicate.
Got it. So where in Canada?
Well, Calgary, Alberta, just up by the mountains for most Americans, north of Idaho, kind of Montana, Idaho area.
Do you go home for the Stampede every year?
I do not. In fact, I typically try and avoid the Stampede. I usually am in there about 6 months of the year because, we have good healthcare and want to keep that, but also to visit friends and family. And then when it starts to get snarky, I leave because I don't like it when it's cold. And so I tend to go wherever life wants to lead me that particular winter.
I'm telling you though, being a Canadian who doesn't like the cold, I mean, that's... it's like a shark who doesn't like the water. I mean, right? I mean,
come on now. It's not cold there all the time.
I guess it is.
There's this misconception that we all live in igloos, but we don't. It's not cold there all the time.
It's cold there all the time, and every one of you plays hockey, and you all eat poutine 3 times a day. Okay, let's talk about what you're doing with entrepreneurs and your online consulting. How'd you get? Well, where'd you start? Like, where was your business career first before you got into that?
Really, where it started was when I was 5. So I will tell you a quick story.
Please.
I grew up rough. There was lots and lots of drama and trauma and violence and so forth in my childhood. You name an issue, it was there. So books were my sanctuary. I begged my mom for the book Heidi when I was 5. And I begged and begged and begged, as only a very persistent little Aries child can. And finally she turned around one day and yelled, "We can't afford it." And I was so shocked, Dan, not because she said that, I heard that all the time, but by the look on her face. Now, I don't remember a lot of my childhood, but I remember that moment really viscerally. I remember the shame and the frustration and the anger and the sadness on her face. And I can remember to this day deciding I never wanted to see that look again, and I had to do something about it because the no life wasn't okay. So in my little 5-year-old brain, it was like, okay, got to fix that. And so I decided, as kids, we don't overcomplicate things. No money, need money, go get money. As adults, we make it very complicated.
Yeah,
but
yes.
Kids, we don't. So I decided I was going to have a business, my first business. And I had seen someone in our housing tenement have a garage sale. So one day when mom was off at work, I'm sure someone was supposed to be watching me, but I hauled everything I could out of our house, small appliances, knickknacks, small furniture, whatever I could. I priced it all because I literally think I came out of the womb with a briefcase and a calculator. I priced it all and I had a sale. And I was so proud. Mom came home and I ran up to her and look, $13.72.
Oh my
I
God.
can remember to this day how much it was. Problem solution, right? But that's not quite how she saw it. She at all. She spanked me. She took my money. She was really mad because I had sold a bunch of our stuff. She made me go back and try and buy it back. And I got back a lot of the stuff from the adults, but the kids wouldn't sell me back my toys. So I lost most of my toys and I didn't get the book. So many people would say that was not a very good, successful entrepreneurial venture. But I think it was because I learned a few things. One, I learned that we can take our destiny into our own hands by having a business. We can solve the problems that we want to solve in the world if we use a business to do that. Two, the lesson I learned was don't go into business with family. Bad idea. I also learned that really, truly, it is an opportunity to put ourselves in the driver's seat, to be the source of the solution, to be the source of that which we want more of in the world. And so I became entrepreneurial from that point forward and just basically relied on myself to generate money for what I needed because we were poor and didn't have stuff. So I just got very entrepreneurial. So my first franchise was lemonade stand. I saw 3 other corners that weren't covered. So I recruited my friends, got the other 3 TV trays out of the set and set my friends up and took 50% of what they made. And my first business was a
You're like a
daycare.
loan shark, you know? My God, 5-year-old loan shark.
Hey, I gave them all the product and set them up with the business, and they just sat there and sold it. So they got 50% for doing nothing, and I got 50% for all the product. And then, and then when I was 11, I had a daycare, and my first employee was the 9-year-old I used to babysit. Paid him $1 an hour, which was good back then. We sometimes had up to 30 kids, and I paid. I fed them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every single day for the whole
Jannette,
summer.
I want to work for you. I'm sending you my resume today. My God, you're a criminal.
So that was my first 3 businesses, and I've been entrepreneurial ever since then. Now,
Wait, hold on. We got to go. I need to go back and talk about the selling the stuff for 1372 because I think what you really learned out of that is that even when you pay them back, the banks are still going to screw you, right? That's the real moral of that story. So you're 5 years old, 5. I mean, you couldn't even you barely could pick up anything. And your mom was, how long was your mom gone for? Just the day? Like she went to go buy milk or?
No, she was probably gone at work, and my mom worked often a couple jobs, and so she was gone all day.
And you were by yourself at 5?
Well, someone was probably supposed to be watching me, a neighbor or something like that. But back then, it was a little looser. And
yeah, in Canada. And I know you want to get off this story, but I'm sorry. This is the most fascinating story I've ever heard. So you're 5 years old and you dragged everything into the street? Like you just put it on the sidewalk?
We had a housing complex. And so we had kind of a back area where there was walkways through all the kind of like condo units. And so, yeah, I put it out on our little lawn. I priced it.
And so you put little notes on saying $2 for my couch, right?
Just about. Well, the one thing that my mom was really pissed about, she had a brand new fuchsia wool dress. It was brand new. It still had the tag on it. And I saw 4 on the tag and I thought it was $4 because I was 5.
Well, at least you didn't say 4 cents. I mean, look, you're trying to get some margin.
It was $40 and it was brand new. She hadn't worn it yet. And $40 dress back then is like a $300 dress these days. It was her only really nice thing. And I sold it. And,
so let's stop there again. So we're going to dig into this. So when the adults come out there, right?
Yeah.
And I get that you live in maybe not the best area and maybe some of these people weren't, didn't go to Harvard, but still they come out and they see a 5-year-old kid by herself with all your belongings on the street. And they're like, yeah, I'll give you $2 for that dress. Were they negotiating with you? Do you remember that?
Some did try. And
oh my God.
That one, I remember saying no, it had to be $4 on that one because it had a 4 on it. But yes, they did negotiate with me on some stuff, but the kids were worse. The kids were the ones that were really stingy. So yeah, but I still made $13.72.
I mean, you were raking it in. I mean, that's a big margin. Okay.
I probably sold hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of stuff for that, but I did get almost all of it back.
I'm gonna stop the podcast right now because there's no way we can top that. I don't care what we talk about. A 5-year-old selling stuff and negotiating on the streets of Calgary to sell her household possessions while mom is out, buying groceries. That's awesome.
But there is a good moral to, or a good happy ending to the story, because I know there's going to be some people out there going, but she didn't get the book. I did actually finally, a few weeks later, my mom relented and she did buy me the book. So I did get Heidi, and it remains my favorite book to this day because it has fond memories to go with it. I grew up knowing that I had to just figure shit out. And so I did.
Apparently so, at 5. I mean, my goodness, I'm surprised you weren't married, and have like a retirement account at the time. It's crazy. Okay, so let's get into our your adult years when you're like 11 or something. When did your real career start?
Well, actually, that's when I had my daycare.
Of course you did. Yeah, sure.
And that was actually probably my most profitable business to date, is that daycare. I just raked it in because I charged each parent $3 a day. And sometimes we had 10 to 30 kids. And
hold on. I mean, come on. You were 11 years old. Okay, 11 years old.
Yes.
And you had 30 kids in daycare. So
at one point,
who was providing the supervision for the daycare? You and your band of first graders, just with stopwatches and milk bottles?
Me and my 9-year-old employee, who was a kid I used to babysit, little young guy. Now, most of the time we had 10 to 15 kids, but there was a few days where it got to 20 or...
Hold on a second. Forget about I want to know about the first kid. Tell me about the first kid. You're 11 and 9, and some parent who, I guess in your neighborhood, the parent was like, what, 13 or 14, or what was going on?
No, they weren't that young, but I babysat for most of them. So they knew me and they knew I was responsible. Their kids knew me. And it was basically, like I said, this housing tenement. So they were outside almost every day, all day long, in the playground, etc. I had activities for them. Once in a while, I had to take them because of weather into the house. And they drop them off in the morning. I'd give them lunch, like I said, PBJs every day, except I think my mom made me make them bologna twice just to, break it up. We had different activities that I did with them, like arts and crafts and stuff like that. But most of it was outside because it was summer, and it was just for the 2 months of summer while they were off school.
What'd you pay the 9-year-old? Like a piece of bread and water?
$1 an hour, which is more than I got paid. I got 75 cents for babysitting per hour. I gave him $1 an hour.
Oh, wow.
And
you're a saint. You're really benevolent. My goodness. Like Mother Teresa of Calgary.
I got $3 per kid, and I had to take my expenses out of that. So I had to learn how to, budget and all of that kind of stuff.
You didn't create QuickBooks back then? I would imagine you're just like...
No, piece of paper.
You're making profit like crazy. You're making with 30 kids. That's $90 a day. You paid the kid $6, right?
Yeah.
You're talking. You're making $84 a day. It's better than than selling your entire family possessions.
Yeah, I know, less expenses, but still, it was about $75 a day on average. Some days less, some days more. And some days, there were a few days I had to hire another kid to help out because we had too many kids. But
you needed a temp. You needed a temp. So you went to the kindergarten. I need a temp.
Exactly. No, I just recruit one of the kids that was being foisted on us by their parent and hire them, and they'd help us out.
Why'd you stop after 2 years? You're making $4,000 a summer. That's more money than I make now. Why'd you stop?
I know, like I said, it was one of my most profitable businesses. Well, because I got a job in a bar. So
13?
13, yeah. When I was 12 and 13, I looked really old, or I looked older than I was. I had developed early, and we needed money. Like, again, my mom wasn't very responsible.
With $4,000 coming in from the daycare business, you needed money in 1971?
Well, but I needed it more consistently than the 2 months. So I went to work as a part-time job in a pizza restaurant, but the pizza restaurant had a lounge, and I ended up working more in the lounge than in the pizza restaurant, even though I was only 13 and then 14. So that paid me more, and I got tips, and it was consistent. So that was why I quit my daycare.
Okay, I'm going to ask no questions about the 14-year-old giving drinks in the lounge.
I was well developed physically, but I wasn't really good with boundaries and stuff. So it was actually very challenging at times.
Like I said, we're going to skip right past college at this point. I don't want to hear about anything. Any other funky jobs in between daycare and...
Oh, funny. I can always win the weirdest job competition.
Well, let's go.
Well, okay. So my very first consulting job was, or training job was training phone sex operators on vocabulary. I had clients who hired me, a couple of guys who were friends of mine that were a gay couple.
Wait, can we stop for just for a second? For my audience, so Jannette had given me a whole bunch of questions that I was supposed to ask. Yeah, whatever. We're done with all of that.
All right, well, that's fine. And people can come check me out later because I do actually legitimately have ways to help you grow your business.
Whatever.
So basically, they wanted to start a phone sex operation, and that was not very common in Canada at that time.
What year was this?
In 81. And
81? Nobody had sex in 81. How's it even possible?
Yes, there was phone sex operations in the US, but not in Canada. And so they were pioneering. And so
Wait, hold on. You go too quick, Jannette. Slow down here. This is too interesting for you to just be running by things. In 81, we had dial-up phones. We had to dial, right?
Yes.
What is phone sex back in 81? Like, how did it even work?
They phone into an 800 number and they get, Tiffany or Bunny or someone on the phone who is really some stay-at-home grandma or,
in Calgary. Yeah.
No, or wherever in Canada, somewhere. So some farm wife who doesn't want to go do the chores or whatever, or a college student who's making money to get through college. Like there was lots of different people there. They would have conversations that would be inspiring for them. And
how would you advertise the number? How did people know what number?
It was usually in magazines like Playboy or various other magazines like that. And there's classified sections in the back, and they had different 800 numbers. It was very common in the US, mostly in the magazines because the internet wasn't really big back then. So there would be a section for escorts and so forth, and then for phone sex.
Rock and roll. Okay. All right. So now how did you get involved with these sexpreneurs who were doing this stuff when you were what at this time? How old are you? Like 20?
21.
21. Of course. I mean.
So I had come back from traveling around North America for 2.5 years. And I got a job at a place called TransAlta Utilities running a print shop. And so I was running a press, AB Dick press throughout the evening and night. Then during the day, I decided I wanted better, more stimulating work. So
stimulating. That would be the operative word.
My friends, I was talking to them about they wanted to start this business. And I said, oh, well, I can help you with that. I'll do some consulting for you. Never having done that, never having,
Sure you didn't.
No, really, I didn't.
Okay.
But I had a history of saying yes and then figuring it out, like figuring out how to do it. So people would say, can you do this? And I go, absolutely. And then I'd go figure out how to do that. I still do that to this day. So they said, we need research. Now, I got to tell you, the research was very illuminating and educational.
Did you go to the library, like the Dewey Decimal System in the library? Like, could you do research back then?
No, I had to do actual market research. Okay. So I actually had to find out things like what are some of the topics they want to talk about? How long does it take to do a call? How many calls can you do in an hour? And so I had to do some of the research. And so
how'd you do the research? Don't skip that. That's going to be a fun part of the story. How'd you do the research, Jannette?
They ran ads and I would take the calls and I would do the calls to find out, and I would be timing them and I would be writing down all of the desires that the person had, and so that we could get the kinds of people that they wanted, the kinds of because we had men, women, young, old, et cetera, that could talk about various topics. And so I did some of that research too, because that kind of business is all predicated on how many calls can you do, because they charge them by the minute, right?
Quick aside, so I had some buddies in Montreal in the 90s who created like this phone switching system, and they started a phone sex business, exactly what you're talking about, but with that, the switcher could handle hundreds or thousands of calls an hour, and they had women all over the world. And so naturally, I mean, being about 1/10 entrepreneur that you are, I said, sure, what the hell? And I gave him a couple bucks to start my thing up. And my number, I'll never forget. The number for mine was 4, the number 4, wet. So I have a little minimal experience. And after 6 weeks, I got it.
So you were answering the phones?
No, how dare you? How dare you, Jannette? It was all Canadians. I figured it was Canadians doing it. Like, who cares? Like, what's the worst that can happen?
So, yeah. I'm sure you were consulting on your company. So, what the training was that I had to do though was they got all these operators that they hired, and they had to train them on how to do the calls. And so they brought me in to train them on vocabulary. So I'm literally at the back of the room going through page after page of words and saying, what does that mean? What does that mean? Like there was a whole, I don't know if I can say this.
Yeah, yes, you can. Yes, you please say it, please.
There was a whole page, 3 columns of words just for the word come. And
give me like 5. Give me like 5 variations. You remember. You remember the 1372, you remember the 5 words for come.
I don't have the same fond memory of this one. Chain of pearls, pearl necklace, jism.
I don't know. I'm asking. Okay, we got 2 more.
Joy juice, and what was another one that was really funny? Your expression.
Oh, your expression. Oh my God, that's so awesome. Jannette, you're the coolest person I've ever met, honestly. Keep going.
This is a conversation I have not had with anyone ever before.
I'm sure it's not. Okay, keep going. So you're training these people, 3 pages of come words.
On vocabulary in general. So I'm at the back of the room freaking out because I've never done this before. I've never done training in public. I've certainly never done it on this topic. And I'm just learning most of this. So I'm like, consciously incompetent in this. And I have to go to the front of the room, be calm, collected, and professional, and make them feel comfortable because there's like 30 people in the room and they're all awkward and stuff. So I have to go up and just be very professional. That was the beginning of my training career. And I've done a lot of training since then, but never any training that was quite as interesting or difficult as that one.
Wait, again, we're not going to just skip past okay, so let's talk about some of the people you were training. Like, so all grandmothers? Was there any women or mostly men?
There was, out of the 30, there was probably about 6 or 8 guys and the rest were women. And I would say they were mostly split between retirees and students. A lot of, young women putting themselves through college or university or something like that. A lot of stay-at-home moms or older women who just were bored and had nothing to do or needed the money or whatever. So I would say the majority were between 20 and 30 and between 45 and 65.
And that was one training. You only had the one training class? Were there more than that?
I just did the one and they did the training on the other stuff. So yeah, that was just the one because it was a relatively small operation, at least initially. So yep, that was my first training job in my career. So
you know what? I think we're done. Jannette, I think we're done. I really don't think we can top that. I think we're done.
Well, I bet we can.
Oh, there's more. Okay, give me the next one. Let's keep going. Fuck it.
Okay, well, my favorite job I've ever had is being what they call a stick in the carnival. Because I traveled with the carnival for a little while and I had 3 jobs because it was boring to just do one. If I'm going to be there, I might as well be there all day. Like at the Stampede, I worked in the cowboy tent, serving as a waitress. I worked as a stick in the betting. So there was this thing where there's a bunch of arrows. I don't know if you have it at your carnivals here, and they spin them and they land on different horses. And if you've got your money on there, then you get 2-to-1 kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
People won't play a cold wheel. And so they hire what they call sticks. So you get paid to go and gamble with someone else's money, be enthusiastic, attract a crowd. People will come and play if there's someone having fun, but they won't come and play if it's a cold wheel, if no one's playing. And they'll bet more if you're having fun and playing and betting and so forth. So my job was to go and bet someone else's money and have fun, basically. So that was my favorite job because that was just fun.
That's a good job, but it doesn't quite match the 3 pages worth of synonyms for cum. I got to be honest with you.
But my probably my weirdest and possibly worst in some ways job was being the mystery woman in the sideshow. Now, it's a little less exciting than it sounds, but back when, in early, carnivals and stuff like that, they used to have a sideshow with, bearded ladies and lizard men and various things like that. They don't have them anymore because they're just too politically incorrect. But I was the mystery woman. So I'd sit on stage with a black cape and a black pillowcase over my head and be mysterious while the barker was saying, come inside and see the mystery woman. She'll amaze and delight and astound you. And da-da-da. I have no idea what they saw when they got inside, but it wasn't me. That was hot and sweaty and boring and the worst job I think I ever had. Well, except for a couple in corporate.
What would be the mystery woman inside? Like, who would be the woman inside?
I knew what they saw. I never actually went in to see what they saw. I don't know.
And how'd you apply for this job? I mean, was it on Craigslist or where do you get a job like that?
No, I was working in a candy floss booth. And so, and I applied for that through the Stampede. And then I just wandered around and asked other people if they had work while I was there. So I'd get off work and I'd go say, hey, do you have work? And I got the job as a stick. And then I go and say, hey, do you need waitresses? And they hired me for that. So I was working like anywhere from 12 to 14, 16 hours a day for the Stampede, which is only 10 days long. But I made a shit ton of money while I was doing that. But then the carnival, the person who owned the floss booth asked me if I wanted to travel with the carnival. So I was 16 at the time. So of course I said yes. And for some ridiculous reason, my mother let me go for the summer. And I traveled with the carnival. I have so many interesting stories about carnies, but that's a whole nother longer story. Let's just say it's a subculture that most people would not realize or know exists.
I'm surprised you weren't renting out the clowns for $30 an hour and paying them $3. Okay, so give me one story about the carnies. Don't think you're getting away with not telling me a carny story. Let's hear it. Give me your best carny story.
Well, there was like, for instance, a guy who was doing his PhD on human psychology, who was one of those guys that puts together the rides that you, when you see them, you think I'm never getting on that ride. But he was actually a PhD thesis study. I had a crush on a young guy that was part of it. And so on my breaks, I go over to see Roy, and he worked in the ball booth where you throw balls into the baskets and you can never win. There was a guy that was really drunk and belligerent, trying to win a big prize for his girlfriend, getting really pissed and so forth. And he started to get fairly abusive. And all Roy did was this. He just put a hand and motioned over his hair. Within 30 seconds, because I was kind of off to the side, 30 seconds, the guy was surrounded behind him with other guys from the rest of the thing. Because the guy was saying, I'm going to beat you, I'm going to thump you out or whatever. Roy said to him, you probably want to calm down, because otherwise my friends are going to have an issue with you. And the guy went, oh yeah, right. And then he turns around and there's 5 guys standing behind him ready to take him on. And literally it was just one little move. They have that much communication and watch each other's backs that much and so forth. It is a whole subculture with its own language, with its own moral code, with its own everything.
Carnival vigilantes. It's awesome. Okay, so look, Jannette, I know you're on this show to talk about like your business, but I'm done. This is the best podcast I've ever done. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to talk about what you actually do. So for people to watch, if they want to get in touch with you and hire you, but I mean, I'm done. You're going to get a lot more business from what we've done in the last 30 minutes than anything else you're going to do this month. I can assure you.
All right. Well, here's what I do. Part of why I became so entrepreneurial is so that I could, pay bills, take care of ourselves, et cetera, because mom wasn't so reliable. So I've been entrepreneurial my whole life for about 40 years.
Clearly.
And I love supporting entrepreneurs. The other half of my life is facilitating personal development workshops. So my specialty is helping people get the 4 inches between their ears working so their business can work. So people, and especially women and maturepreneurs, those who are hashtag not done by a long shot. So people who are 55 plus and too inspired to retire. By the way, that is the largest cohort of people coming into the business market of any time in history is happening right now. And no one's paying any attention because we're invisible.
Well, they don't care about Gen X, do they? We're the we don't exist.
Or boomers, right? Yeah. So Gen X and boomers, and especially if you're a woman, you're completely invisible. But literally millions and millions of people are coming into the entrepreneurial market, flooding it. And no one is paying any attention or capitalizing on it. Yeah. I support them in getting seen and heard, and have women really figure out how to profit from living their purpose. Really, as you can tell, what I am is pretty resourceful and think outside the box and support people in figuring out how they're going to solve the problem that they're here to solve. Well, so that's what I do.
Well, you certainly have a lot of experience with that, clearly, for a long time. Where do people find you? How can they get in touch with you?
My website is bodacity.ca, BODACITY. Bodacity means bold and audacious. It's not a word I made up. It's a real thing. It came to me in a download, so that's what it is, bodacity.ca. Or they can watch my podcast, the Purpose and Profit Sisterhood podcast, or the Maturepreneur podcast on both YouTube and Apple, Spotify, etc. But just come check me out, the Purpose and Profit Sisterhood Facebook group. We got a great community. Come ask questions, play, reach out to me. ping me on social media, send up smoke signals, whatever works for you. Reach out if you want some, encouragement and what I call a kick in the context. It's time to get going. So pitter patter, let's get at her.
Well, I think you're going to get a lot of fans from today's podcast. And I realize it wasn't the show that either one of us expected, but it's one of my funnest ones I've ever done. I could probably have you on for days and days, but I think we've accomplished a lot today. We found out a lot about you, Jannette, for sure.
We have. And I'm not sure that they'll contact me for the right things. And so, gentlemen, if you're listening to this,
they'll contact you for the right
thing other than business.
They'll contact you for the right things, I can assure you. Okay, everybody. Jannette, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. Everybody, this has been another episode of Middle Age Mess, the show where we talk about how middle age is the middle child of ages. And we'll see you next time. Thanks so much. Jannette, fucking A, man. You are so cool.
Thank you.
Oh, my.
That's funny.
Unbelievable.
That was a very fun podcast.